All right. Well, it's good to see a big crowd. It's an honor to be back to Temple Hall. As Sherry said, I graduated from here about 15 years ago, 1998, and it flies by. I know you guys feel like it's dragging by right now. It does fly by, and I know I sound old. I'm not that old. Talking to you today more about an operational perspective with prescribed fire. You can Google stuff. You can find out all sorts of cool information about fire, about why we have fire, about what fire does. Lots of information you can get. But the operational side of it is something that if you don't actually get to go out and help on a prescribed fire or assist on wildfire, if you don't get that on-the-ground training, it's hard to really understand why we have prescribed fire and the advantages of having it. As she mentioned, I do office out of the Ava office. I've been there since 2002. I cover Wright, Douglas, Ozark, and Taney counties in southern Missouri. Drury-Mincy is one of our conservation areas. Just a little bit of background on it because of the field station there. How many of y'all have been to the Bull Shoals field station? Oh, awesome. So you guys know more about Drury-Mincy than me. Cool. Drury-Mincy is southeast of Branson and Taney County, just under 5,600 acres. A couple cool things about it makes it unique. The entire eastern boundary of the conservation area is Bull Shoals Lake. So we have this huge fire line on the east side. Basically, if we have a west wind, it's almost impossible for a prescribed fire to turn wild, okay, which is good. You'll find out later if you don't see what I'm talking about. It's a nice thing to have. Glade woodland dominated conservation area. Most of our areas in the southern part of the Ozarks along the Arkansas line are this glade woodland type complex, dry soils, a lot of exposed bedrock. History on Drury-Mincy, it is the side of the field station, as Sherry mentioned. It's used for deer and turkey restocking from the 1940s through the 1960s. And it's hard to tell now, but in the early part of the 1900s, deer and turkey almost went extinct in the state of Missouri. Areas like Drury-Mincy and a few other conservation areas in the southern part of the state held remnant populations, and so they actually trapped and relocated deer and turkey from these areas to the rest of Missouri to get to the population numbers we're at now. Some things to do just in general. Drury-Mincy, it is a wildlife management area. It is open to hunting. Deer hunting is restricted to archery methods only. We've had a managed muzzleloader hunt in the past, discontinued that this year. We're managing it as an archery-only area. Has a really good deer population. Turkeys, squirrels, rabbits, dove, lots of hunting opportunity. There's fishing opportunities as well with Bull Shoals Lake, sucker grabbing in Bee Creek in the spring. Now's the part where I find out who is from this part of the state. Who knows what sucker grabbing is? All right. I bet you're from southern Missouri if you know. Suckers are a bottom-feeding fish. Most people look at it as pretty nasty, but in the southern part of Missouri, it's a delicacy. We take a big hook out, grab them, and we fry fish. So that's not part of my presentation. I just thought I'd throw that in. Hiking, camping, we have a couple self-guided trails, and you're welcome to walk anywhere you want to on the area. It's open 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. Every day of the year, except during managed hunts. And camping, we have a primitive campground that anybody's welcome to camp at. Bird watching is pretty popular down there as well. We have some unique riparian habitat, a giant river cane. It's a critical habitat for breeding habitat for neotropical migrant songbirds. There's a Swainson's warbler up there. Audubon Society has a conservation area bird list. It's the best place to go to if you want to see what kind of birds are on the area. All right, current management. Overall focus, like I mentioned, is deer and turkey management. It's kind of the big two species with the Conservation Department as far as hunting goes. We do manage for several other species as well. We do that through the diverse plant communities that are present there. Glade, woodland, riparian habitat. High quality green browse food plots, probably not completely necessary, but they are fully utilized by wildlife on the area. They're a supplemental source of food for the winter months when food's a little scarce. Things like soybeans, wheat, clover, alfalfa. We plant some cereal grains like milo and millet and sunflowers. Giant river cane is another restoration process we do now. You can see a river cane stand over there. Giant river cane's in the bamboo family. It acts as a soil stabilizer and a stream bank stabilizer. The creeks in this part of the state were abundant with it when white settlers came. But because it usually indicated a good soil, they would graze it, then they would plow up the soil and plant crops. So not nearly as much river cane as there used to be. We do some restoration projects. In fact, Missouri State, in conjunction with the Audubon Society, has a Glade Academy at Drury-Mincy every summer. Some of you all may have been involved in that. But we typically transplant some river cane to try to expand this habitat. And then glade restoration and fire, I'm going to tie those two together because you can't have one without the other. Basically, glade restoration, if you ever heard of glades, some people refer to them as cedar glades. It may just be terminology, but glades in this part of the world don't have to have cedar trees on them. And there's a big reason that we restore glades by cutting cedar trees and then burning, doing prescribed fire on them. Glades are a very diverse plant community, but without sunlight, plants aren't going to grow. And without the proper pH, those plants aren't going to grow. What cedar trees do, as you know, they're evergreen, so they shade out anything that may be growing there. When they start to grow, they shade it out. Then when they drop their needles, the needles are very acidic. They have a high calcium content, so they lower the pH of the soil. And by doing that, those plants that are supposed to be there can't grow either. So prescribed fire kind of restores glades to their what they were supposed to be. And prescribed fire, which is kind of what we're here about. I brought a few little tools, just stuff that we use. It's the most economical, natural, beneficial management technique that we can use. And I say that because fire has been around for as long as people have been around. And fire has been used for eons for management purposes. Native Americans used fire because they knew that's where the grazers would be. If they burned a grassland, the grazers moved into that area, so they used it as a management tool. We use it as well. We can affect more acres in less time with less money by doing a prescribed burn than any other management technique we have. So it's kind of a cool process. You've got to be a little bit of a pyromaniac, I admit. If you love fire, you'll enjoy prescribed fire. If you're scared of fire, you'll probably hate it. But it's a very beneficial management technique. Drury-Mincy, we have about 11 prescribed burn units, totaling almost 3,200 acres. These acreages are off a little bit because the 5,600 acres includes the flood area from Bull Shoals Lake. Bull Shoals Lake can fluctuate about 70 feet of water depth is what its flood pool is. So in any given year, we may have 1,000 acres underwater. So we have a high percentage of the area that's actually within the burn units. We try to keep those on rotation. This map just shows you the yellow is the outline of Drury-Mincy, and then about the others, of course, are the prescribed fire units. 2013, I didn't get added on here. Otherwise, it shows the dates since I've been the manager at Drury-Mincy that we've burned those. Triangle Glade, Hogue Field, and the Mincy Creek unit up there were actually burned in 2013 also. So as you can see, we try to stay on a 3 to 5 year rotation. That's dependent on a few things, obviously weather being the big thing. If we don't have good burn weather, in other words, it rains all spring, it's hard to get things burned. So it is dependent on weather. Sometimes we'll lessen that 3 year rotation down to 2 years if maybe we need to do some woody plant and control some woody plants on a glade, suppress woody growth. Which leads me into why do we burn? Y'all are going to have a talk later on, I think, about fire ecology, so I'm not going to try to get into fire ecology, but basically there's a lot of different reasons that we burn. And when we get into talking about a burn plan, I'll go over a little more of that. But plant diversity. Prescribed fire enhances plant diversity on these glade and woodland communities. Just for example, a deer will browse over 600 species of plants. So a diverse suite of plants means more insects, reptiles, they'll eat insects, birds eat insects, bats eat insects. So you get a more diverse group of insects, but also you get those diverse group of plants that deer and other wildlife will take advantage of as well. Some of the research from Missouri State Field Station down there shows that where they find the bats at most commonly are in the burned areas. Part of that reason is that there's a lot of insects there. So some good stuff coming from the field station. Woody plant suppression. Talked about cedars a little bit earlier. On a glade, if you go, let's say, more than 4 to 5 years, you start getting woody plant growth, stuff like eastern red cedar, fragrant sumac, maybe eastern redbud, lots of woody plants that are colonizer species that'll start coming in. Eventually, they take over the glade. The plants that were growing there can no longer grow because of the competition for food and for water, but also for the shade. So we can burn and do a growing season burn, for instance, in July, August, September, and we actually top kill the woody plants. So we take away all that shade and allow the plants that are supposed to be there to grow. Reduce fuels. MOFEP, the Missouri Forest Ecosystem Project, has done a study that says after 3 years, only about 60% of leaf litter is decomposed. So without fire, you get fuel loading or fuel buildup. Think of if you go walk through the woods a month from now, you're going to have a leaf layer about like this, okay? Over time, that continues to compact down. Snow compacts it, rain compacts it, but every year it continues to build. It's a soil builder, which is a good thing, but over time, nothing can grow through that. It acts as a thick mulch layer. So the seeds that are there in the soil, the seed bank, they can't grow. Sunlight can't get to the soil. It's hitting the leaf layer, but it's not hitting to the soil. So doing a prescribed burn will take care of that and allow the plants, your grasses, herbaceous vegetation that are in a woodland, allow them to grow. The other thing that reducing fuels will do, everyone heard about all the wildfires out west this summer, I'm sure. The news gets a hold of it, and it's gloom and doom. There was a lot of fire. Most of that is because there's no prescribed fire, and people don't realize that, but prescribed fire will actually help reduce the impacts and the intensity of a wildfire. And you can think about it however makes sense to you, but if I light one leaf on fire up here, it's not too impressive. But if I pile a pile of leaves up here and light it on fire, it's going to be a lot more impressive. Same concept. The more of a fuel load you have, the more intense the fire is. So that combined with low humidities and steep topography, all those things, is what causes a lot of those wildfires in the western U.S. to blow up every year. So that's another reason we burn, is to reduce that fuel load. And then from a wildlife standpoint, we're trying to maintain wildlife-friendly early successional vegetation. And you all know that term. All that means is we want to keep it in the vegetative state. As I mentioned earlier, it attracts more insects during that stage of growth. It's more palatable to most wildlife in that stage of growth. And you've got a window there when it's small. Take an oak tree, for example. When it's real small, deer might browse on it. Not a lot of value to it. But for about 10 to 15, 20 years, there's really not a lot of wildlife value to an oak tree. Once it matures, it drops acorns every year, has a lot of value. But we're trying to maintain it in an early successional stage. 7-fold increase in deer forage in burned versus unburned habitat. And that's talking about woodland in general. And I'm throwing that term around a lot. Woodland used to be called savanna. And for what it's worth, if you think about savanna, it's grassland with scattered trees. This is the easiest way for me to think about it. I'm sure there's other definitions, but grassland with scattered trees, that's savanna. Think of Africa. I mean, they talk about African savanna. That's more kind of what we're talking about. Woodland is a wooded area with grass underneath. Okay, so you've got the herbaceous growth, but you've still got 50 to 70% canopy cover. And woodland is actually a very, very beneficial habitat. Fire dependent as well. So how do we conduct a prescribed burn? There is multiple classes on this, and I will not do it justice today. I'll just throw that out there. I'm going to touch on several things. If you all have questions afterwards, that's great, come up. But there is days and days and days of classes on how and why we conduct prescribed burns. So we're going to touch on a few of those. Some factors to consider if you're going to do a prescribed burn: an approved burn plan. The Conservation Department requires us to have an extensive burn plan. I brought some of my old burn plans up. Usually 10 to 15 pages per burn plan. We'll go through some of what they contain here in a moment, but those burn plans are basically, that's our entire plan of what we want to happen or what we expect to happen. And it also is kind of covers our liability, okay? Because with that plan approved, there's been several folks look at it, all the way up to a fire management team that is statewide, that said everything on there should work. Habitat objectives, before you do anything as a wildlife manager, you have to start with the question of why and what am I trying to do? What's your objective? Am I trying to manage for plant diversity? Am I trying to manage for logging, saw timber? Am I trying to manage for quail, for deer? What am I doing? What's my habitat objectives? Fuels, I'm not talking about gas or diesel. We're talking about natural cover that carries a fire, basically. Think grass, leaf litter, pine needles, sticks, logs, that sort of thing. That's fuels. We'll throw those into two broad categories, light and heavy. Light fuels are going to be like leaves and grass and pine needles, those sort of things. They tend to catch fire real easily, but they burn real quickly. So if you have a grass fire, it's going to burn really intense for a short duration. On the other side, those heavy fuels takes longer for them to ignite, but once they do, they're going to burn a long time. So when we're talking about fuels, that's kind of what we're talking about. Weather, pretty general, but we'll talk about a whole lot more detail on weather. Topography. Topography makes a huge impact on how a fire burns and the impact it has on the plant community. Smoke management. As a manager, as a burn boss, smoke can get you in more trouble than anything else we do because smoke goes a lot of places. Even if the fire stays within the confines of your fire lines, smoke goes a long ways. Surrounding area, it's important for us to know what's going on around us. Is there a nursing home next to where you're going to burn? Is there a 4-lane highway? What's going on in that surrounding area? And fire lines. You'll hear these called fire lanes, fire lines, fire breaks, whatever. Basically, they're to stop the fire. Okay, it may be a highway, it may be a line that I use this little rake over here to rake in oak leaves, but it's a fire line. It'll stop the fire. And I've got it listed last, but it's always the first thing we think about: safety of personnel. You all probably heard about the Yarnell Hill fire in Arizona this year, where 19 firefighters died on that wildfire. Wildfire and prescribed fire are both fire. Okay, they don't act any differently. They're just fire. The difference is one of them you put the line in before you start, one of them you put the line in after it starts. So on prescribed burns, there is a lot of things that you need to take into consideration as far as safety of your firefighters or your personnel. Okay, burn plan. I'll try to speed up. I apologize for all the words on the slides. There's a ton of information to try to get out. So forgive me for reading some of it. Okay, this is just a cover page, a front page for this particular burn unit, Mincy Creek unit. It's 1,180 acres at Drury-Mincy. It's the one I'll reference most. The Bull Shoals Field Station sits within this unit. So it is one, if you drive into the field station, everything on the right-hand side after you cross the slab, the little creek there, Mincy Creek, everything on your right-hand side all the way to the field station is this burn unit. So you want to make sure you include a map. Definitely have to have a map so everybody knows where they're at and what the burn unit looks like. We're going to see what our desired weather is. I'm going to include both a range and ideal. We can burn anywhere within that range. It does not have to be ideal in order to conduct the burn. We're not going to box ourselves in that much. If we did, we would never get anything accomplished. So I'm going to throw out a range of 30 to 80. Ideally, 60 to 70 is probably more realistic for a spring burn, March, April burn. Relative humidity is huge. A lot of folks don't think about that. You think about sunlight, you think about strong winds. You know, every time the wind blows and it's dry outside, the news is telling you don't burn. Relative humidity probably plays a bigger impact, in my opinion. If I have 40% relative humidity, I'm pretty confident a fire's not going to get away. But if you drop that in half to 20%, all bets are off. And if it goes lower than 20%, you're going to have spot fires, you're going to have things get across the line, probably going to have a long night. So just for some perspective, those western fires that are going on in the summer times, they oftentimes have humidities below 10%. And you get to humidity below 10%, your eyes dry out, your nose cracks, your lips crack. It's pretty dramatic when the RH drops. Okay, sorry, I lost track. Okay, back to objectives. I've got objectives right here. We're going to decrease leaf litter and woody saplings, increase grass and forb species. Fuel type, I've got to have on my burn plan here what we're burning in. It makes a huge difference if we're burning in full canopy timber versus a glade that's 30% slope. Location, you got to know where we're at. What kind of crew is needed, what's present, how many people do you need to help with this. Equipment, There's a risk assessment page, has several different factors that you throw in to determine risk. It'll spit out a number that tells you if it's above this percent or above this number on risk, then it has to be approved by another level, and it makes it a little harder to get the burn done, basically. Contingency plan, what happens if the fire gets away? I've got a slide that shows that contingency plan here in a second. Emergency phone numbers and notifications, basically everything from police, fire department. I always call the Greene County Health Department because of the smoke. Because if we burn at Drury-Mincy with a south wind and we burn 1,180 acres, Springfield's going to smell our smoke. Okay, even though it's 60 miles away, 50 miles away, Springfield's going to smell that smoke. So I call the health department, notifications of neighbors so they kind of know what's going on. And then we're going to have a pre and post burn evaluation that basically says what are the on-site conditions before we start? What's the temperature? Is everyone present that's supposed to be here? Post burn evaluation would be something like what actually happened. Okay, here's what our plan was, but what actually happened? What percent burned? How hot did it burn? Was there any negative comments? Was any citizens coming and chewing you out for burning? Or I mean, what actually happened? That stuff's all documented. I keep it in a binder. The idea with these burn plans is if for some reason I couldn't burn, I could hand that book to Sherry. She could walk out there and she could burn that unit, even if she had never been there. That's how detailed the burn plans are supposed to be. They allow other managers to come in and burn a unit even if you're not available. Habitat objectives, again, we're basically describing the effect that our fire should have or that we plan for it to have on the plant community. Okay, what kind of impact? And again, the objectives here on this particular burn unit, we wanted to decrease leaf litter. It is a woodland unit. Those of you who have been through there, it's a woodland unit, so we're going to decrease leaf litter to get some sunlight to the ground, increase those grasses and forbs. We're also going to decrease woody saplings. There's a large glade complex on the west side of this burn unit. It grows in with saplings pretty quickly, so if we don't get this on a 3-year rotation, we lose that glade or lose parts of that glade. Okay, fuels. It talks about fuel model 3 and fuel model 9 up here. All that is, we have a behave program, a computer program that kind of predicts fire behavior. You can see some of the numbers it spits out here. Fuel model 3 is tall grass, 9 is leaf litter. So that's all that's saying. Basically, this is going to describe the dominant fuel type that's in the burn unit. Okay, and reason being is different fuels are going to burn differently with more intensity. It all depends on fuel loading, like I talked about earlier, the amount of fuel that's there. Also talks about fuel moisture, slope, and density. Heavier fuels are going to burn slower, but for a longer duration, like I talked about. Heavier or higher fuel moisture. If it rained 2 days ago, you're going to have a lot higher fuel moisture. It's not going to burn as deep into the leaf litter, probably not going to burn as intense. But this just describes the fuels. Weather. I want current and predicted fire weather. It doesn't do you justice to have what's going on right now. If it rained yesterday, you're probably not going to get it to burn today. Okay, the fuels are still wet; they're not going to burn. If you're burning 1,180 acres and there's a frontal boundary coming through like we've got happening right now, what's going on outside? The wind's blowing, right? So when we have a frontal boundary passing, the wind usually increases, the weather's going to change. If I light 1,180 acres today, it's not going to be out by tonight. It's going to burn for 2 to 3, 4 days sometimes. So if that interior is burning, we want to make sure we know what's going on the next 48 hours to make sure we still have a good burning conditions into the weekend. And then again, temperature, relative humidity, I mentioned those things earlier. Wind, speed, and direction. We want to make sure it's from the right direction, and that's for smoke management more than anything. And then wind speeds, kind of self-explanatory there. You don't want to go light a fire when you have 30 to 40 mile per hour winds. Topography. Did you all know fire burns faster uphill? Good knowledge. You don't want to be at the top of this when the bottom starts on fire. Okay, that's what gets folks in trouble on Western Fire, where you have these huge steep slopes. South Canyon Fire in Colorado about 20 years ago, 14 firefighters died. That was the situation there. The topography was so steep, they got caught above the fire, and it was too steep for them to get out, and the fire caught them. So topography is a big deal. Fire burns faster uphill because it preheats the fuels. And all that means is if fuel's here, fire's here, all the heat up here dries it out before the fire gets to it. So it increases the further upslope it gets. The topography will affect flame length, fire intensity, and will damage trees more. Steeper slope, more intense the fire, the more trees you're going to kill. If you've traveled out west the last few years, there's a lot of bug kill, but probably you've been to places where an entire mountainside was dead trees. And sometimes that's the case here. The fire rips up the slope and kills the trees. And you should always have a topographic map with your prescribed burn plan because of this, because fire will behave different depending upon where it's at on the slope. Okay, smoke management. Again, during and after the burn, you can see in the background here, this smoke column is going straight up. It's not affecting these firefighters. It's not really affecting the road. It's not affecting Gainesville, the little town over here. It's not affecting any of those things. It's going straight up. Reason being is we have an unstable atmosphere with clear sky. It's conducive to getting rid of some smoke. Okay, if you have a little bit of wind in the upper atmosphere, that carries the smoke away as well. We call that a ventilation rate. And basically, it's the safety concerns of smoke management. Everything from smoking in roads and airports or houses, all the way down to arcing power lines. Most folks don't realize that electricity can actually arc through smoke. The carbon particles in smoke has actually killed people that were walking through smoke under a power line. And smoke contains carbon monoxide and particulates. It can affect your vision, see where you're going. It can affect your lungs, obviously. So again, we're thinking safety first as fire personnel and making sure we know where the smoke. I talked about the 1,180 acres. This is that burn unit, the Mincy Creek unit. You can see what we have to look at big picture when we kind of zoom out on ArcMap and see what's around us. Would be a bad idea for me to burn this with a southeast wind. I have Branson. I have all the red lines are highways. I have the new airport over here to the west. We have Forsyth, other little towns around here. Lots of vacation homes on these lakes. So you have to know what's around you because you affect a whole lot more than your little world where you're standing and lighting the fire. So know where your smoke goes. That kind of ties into this. The ignition potential is one I hadn't talked about here of other areas. If you're going to do a prescribed burn, you got to take into effect what's across the fence or across the road. If everything's cool on your side, and you're not worried about it, but across the fence is a bunch of dead grass. If an ember gets in that, you have a wildfire. So you have to know what's around. Snags, it's just dead trees. If they're close to the line, they can catch fire, drop embers across your fire line, start a wildfire. They also pose a hazard to personnel as well. If a dead tree catches fire and falls and you're under it, it's a bad day. So big safety concern. Contingency fire line location, when you're looking at the surrounding area, I joked about the lakes earlier, but that's actually a contingency line. If my fire on this Mincy Creek unit gets out and starts east, I have a huge contingency line. Bull Shoals Lake is there. It's not going to cross it. So you have to look at your surrounding area and kind of know what's going on around it. The other thing here is topography. As the humidity rises in the evenings, smoke tends to lay. We have a Caney Mountain Conservation Area over near Gainesville in Ozark County is another big area we manage. We've got some large burns on it. If we have a north influence, Gainesville's a little town that sits in a valley south of the area. And oftentimes I've driven through Gainesville on my way home after we burn, and it's just a big cloud of smoke. Everybody's talking about where's the fire at. And you don't want to do that. You can get by with it sometimes, but if someone has asthma and has a reaction because of a fire you lit, it can come back on you liability-wise. So just another precaution to look at. You guys thought fire was just going out and lighting something. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Okay, fire lines. Roads work great. Natural features, creeks, lakes, rock outcrops. Sometimes in the spring we'll get a big green wheat field somewhere. That's a good fire line. It's not going to burn across that. You're thinking defensible space. To build a fire line, we can use a lot of different things. This leaf rake is one option. I would not recommend it if you have a leaf blower available. I'm not lazy, I'm efficient, but several miles of using a leaf rake is a little rough on the hands. Leaf blowers, dozers, tractor blades, basically anything to get 2 feet of bare mineral soil. That's the key. We want to get to bare mineral soil. Dirt does not burn, okay, unless it's got a whole lot of organic matter in it. But just in general, dirt does not burn. So we want bare mineral soil, or like I said, if you've got the luxury of having water or rocks. Typically, when we go build a fire line on most of our burn units, if we can't get mechanized equipment there, like a tractor or a dozer, we use a leaf blower and hardwood leaf litter. It does an adequate job. You get a good fire line in, and it's safe to burn off of. Okay, firefighter safety. I didn't bring a lot of this stuff in just because I figured the picture was just as easy. Helmet, essentially embers. It keeps embers from landing on your head. Or if you just have a hat on, it can land on a hat and burn your hat. A helmet works good for that. Also, if you have limbs that fall, it can still hurt you, but those helmets have saved a lot of people's lives from a small limb. A limb as big around as your arm can kill you real easy if it falls out of the top of a tree. So it's a pretty vital part of your safety equipment. Then eye protection, gloves, leather boots, just the essential stuff. The very attractive, stylish outfit that I'm wearing there is Nomex. It's just a fire-resistant clothing. It will burn, but you have to basically stand in the middle of the fire for quite a while. It's fire-resistant. It'll get a little burned hole in it before it actually ignites. So radio is a huge thing. Most folks don't think of it as safety, but the 19 firefighters that died earlier this year, they died because of a communication breakdown. It's just in general. I mean, they died because of the conditions worsened dramatically, but they lost contact with their dispatch and they lost contact with their lookout. No one could let them know that the activity had changed, fire behavior had changed. So very good safety tool. And then, of course, drinking water. You will get dehydrated if you don't drink lots of water when you're doing a burn. And then how many people know what this is? Cool. A couple of you do. It's a drip torch. I put it on here as a safety tool. Maybe, maybe not, but it is a vital tool for a prescribed burn. It allows you to put fire where you want it and in mass quantities. You can walk along, it's not lit on this picture, but you can walk along the fire line as fast as you want to walk. There's a mixture of gas and diesel in here. It burns into a wick up at the top, and then just like it says, it drips fire off. And everywhere you go, there's fire behind you. So if you forget and turn around the wrong way, you can spread fire in the wrong place. But it's a great tool, and we use it exclusively on fire. We use it on wildfire. We set fires to put out. Okay, just kind of a timeline of a prescribed burn. We're doing evaluation year-round. As a wildlife manager or as a manager of habitat, you should always be evaluating what's going on with the area you manage or the area that you're whether it's your own land or conservation area or whatever it may be. So we evaluate year-round. I typically write burn plans in December for no other reason other than my kids are out of school from Christmas to New Year's. It gives me an excuse to work at home and write burn plans. So January, we start our fire line prep. Typically, that's cutting snags, starting the initial things. February, we're running leaf blowers, dozers, tractors, whatever we're using at that particular time, getting our line constructed so that we can start monitoring for weather during March and April. Through July and September on there because we do some growing season burns. A couple reasons. One is the woody suppression I talked about earlier. We can control woody plants, but also burning in July or through September, that growing season, that tends to stimulate forbs or broadleafs or wildflowers, very beneficial plants, whereas burning in the spring stimulates grasses more. Okay, preventing wildfire. I put this on here. The connection is a prescribed fire can become a wildfire really easy. And good old Smokey the Bear has done a nice job of telling us why fire is bad. I'm going to try to tell you why fire is good. Okay, I think it's just as unnatural to remove fire from a system than it is to put fire in. Okay, in other words, yeah, it's bad to have uncontrolled wildfire, but completely removing fire from your management tools is just as damaging to the habitat. So I talked about that contingency plan earlier. This is a contingency plan. This is what happens if the fire has a minor escape, moderate, or major escape. It tells you what our plan is on that burn plan. This is what we plan to do in the event that these things happen. The way to prevent a wildfire is to stay within the parameters that you've defined on your burn plan. And remember defensible space. During that stage when you're building fire line, remove jackpots of fuel or slash from the line. Cut snags. Potential problems, if you get them out of the way before you start the fire, it makes the fire a whole lot simpler. This is a big one. Most people don't realize this. If you haven't ever been on a fire, it's hard to, I can't tell you in a classroom what to expect on a fire. You can't do that unless you're actually on the ground. But most people don't realize how you keep a fire where you want it. Fire lines is a big part of that, obviously. We don't just go light a fire wherever we pull up to. Typically, we'll go to the highest elevation and we start against the wind. The reason being, the further a fire burns, the bigger your fire line is, right? It leaves black behind, burned fuel. It's not going to burn back over that. So if we start against the wind, we're holding line to start with. And by the time we get to the other side of this fire on a ring head fire, a head fire is going to blow across. We don't have to worry about it because we've got all this black that's burned in. So we can actually, by starting against the wind, we can burn a whole lot more safely. Where folks get in trouble, landowners get in trouble, is they just go light it wherever they decide to light it. A lot of folks think light it with the wind because it burns faster. It does. Not necessarily the safest way. Another way, make sure you got plenty of trained personnel and all your equipment is on site and working. It's a bad feeling when you've got a fire going across the road and across the neighbor and you can't get your engine started to. Okay, when planned and conducted properly, prescribed fire has vast benefits to plant and wildlife species. Things like collared lizards or roadrunners, we see them commonly on glades. The reason being they're sight feeders. Okay, they have to see things and chase them to eat. Without fire, those glades get closed in with woody plants and cedar trees. They're not able to do that. Over at Peck Ranch Conservation Area in Carter County, Steagle Mountain Natural Area is a huge glade complex. And they've actually got a study that's shown dispersal of eastern collared lizards based on fire. They were isolated in this one little population for years and years and years. And until they cut cedar and started doing landscape-style burns that opened up the glades, the lizards never dispersed. Once they started doing the landscape burns, the lizards dispersed all over the entire burn unit. And if you've never seen one of these little critters, they are as close to a iguana jungle-type dinosaur species as we have in the Ozarks. They can get about that long, including their tail. They have a really strong bite. I was a restoration coordinator for them for a while and got to go catch some and relocate them. They're fun, but you don't want to get bit by them. And as I talked before, plants, insects, deer, turkeys, quail, whatever it may be, fire is beneficial to these things. If they occur in a glade woodland complex, they've evolved with fire, and fire is an important part of their survival. That being said, any questions in general on anything I've covered or other fire? You guys were forced to be here and you're just ready to go, right?